301. Call the roll, please.
Are you online, Roberta? Well, it looks like you're muted. Your mic's muted, Roberta.
Doesn't look like it is.
Yeah, I might show it on mine. It is.
Early.
Well, I'll go ahead and do the roll call. Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Silke?
Here.
Director Weirick?
Here.
Director Daddy?
Here.
Chair Hages?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is director announcements. Start with Peter.
Nothing from the mutuals.
Just that we're trying to get something set up with the county to meet out at the diversion, which that really isn't a water conservation district announcement, but it sort of is. But we haven't had a meeting. The conservation district hasn't met.
Bill?
Is that me?
Yes.
No, nothing.
And Bob?
Hi, Richard. No, nothing from the community district.
Okay, for Lake Casitas, I think we gained about 7,000 acre feet from the December storms. It's better than nothing. Okay, the next item. Stuff here. General manager comments.
Yeah, the only comment I wanted to make is we need to log out. If we're going to go into that closed session, we need to log out a couple minutes before 3:30 so we all have time to get into that closed session. If you don't have the login information, let me know. And once you're going to have to log out of this session and then log into the other one. And when we're completed with closed session, James Hahn is going to keep this session open and we'll log back in. So we need to do all that right before 3:30.
Okay. And will you send me the link so I can log into the closed session?
Okay.
Why don't you just resend it to everybody so it's up top?
Yeah, I'll do that. Oh, where are you?
Yeah, I'm no longer able to do the breakout sessions. If you want, we can do the breakout sessions. My computer skills are scary today, though.
Yeah, and I didn't know how to do all that. I can't do it. It'd have to be done through the city.
James.
But right
James
now,
and Bill and my mic is muted.
You're working now, but you're coming in and out.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult to just go to your email and log into the other Zoom session.
Right. Just forward the
Yeah.
link and just click on that hyperlink.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
I'll see if I can find it.
I've got it. I just there it is.
Okay.
All right, Jordan, do you want to give us your status report?
Sure. Let me share the screen here so you can see what we're doing here. Today, I'd like to present what we're calling a perfect storms as we talk about the Ojai Basin conditions for the water year 21 to 22 to date. This is pretty exciting times because I call it a perfect storm since we had a series of about 3 major bands come through and deliver a good amount of precipitation for us for December. As Chair Hages referenced, with only 7,000 acre feet coming into to Lake Casitas, it sounds like a lot, but it's not that much. And it really speaks to some of the intensity of the rainfall that we had. And we see something similar here. So let's go through this. Precipitation's where it all starts, of course. Up on the ridge tops, we had over 20 inches of rain. that's the tributary area, but down the valley floor, it's closer to a foot. And I think our total at the fire station is 12.99 inches. So just literally 1/100th of an inch under 13, somewhere a little over half of an annual average. And of course, as dry as it's been in January, we're making sure that we're still doing rain dances for some later winter and spring rains. As you can see, most of the precipitation was in December with 11.62 inches over those about 3 major storms, the first around the 14th and 15th, and then the Christmas 4-day period, and then just preceding New Year's. Haven't had much since, but we'd have 1.33 inches in October. Now, these numbers look good, I think, but I think they look better on a graph like this. So we prepared this bar chart. This is basically daily rainfall, and you can see where those storms plot. It's really coalesced right in the latter half of December. That's pretty intense. There was times when we had, 1/2 inch an hour there on that night of the 13th and the 14th, and then just Christmas Eve time too. Pretty intense. If I scale that down and move it over to where it's more palatable, and we actually put the cumulative amount of precipitation here, you get the step chart. And I like this because it kind of adds everything up. So the green line there on your screen is accumulation of the year-to-date rainfall. And I think that's important when we look at these things hydrographically. And you'll see other distillations of this chart later in this presentation. But where does all that rain go? We've actually made a couple of reconnaissance visits here this month. Typically we make about 1, but given how dynamic the watershed is, and when we have this type of precipitation, these perfect storms where we have a good amount of precipitation in, and then it is absolutely dry for weeks to a month following them, it's really good to see that recession occur, both hydrologically as the creeks flow, but also in the subsurface. And it really just continues to speak to a lot of the hypotheses and facts that we're continuing to find out as we continue to understand the basin. So the first reconnaissance we made this month was on the 5th of January, and then a second on the 21st. On the 5th, we still had continuous flow across the basin in San Antonio Creek. We actually measured right at the old diversion works, 5.15 CFS. That's a good amount of water, of course. Probably not enough to divert at the spreading grounds at that time, but we're well down a couple weeks past, for a full week past some of the most intense rainfall we had that might have allowed for some diversion. The lower points of flow is that water's infiltrating. And then as we get closer to the outflow point of the basin, only 1.63 CFS we're exiting as surface flow. So, you're getting good close to 4 CFS that are actually infiltrating into the basin just along San Antonio Creek, at least. And of course, some of the others, they're also flowing. Montgomery Creek was flowing as intensely, if not more so, during portions of these storms, largely because it's so urbanized and clayey over that side of the basin. Actually measured just under 1 CFS at 0.77 on the 5th. Some of the other creeks we did observe have some flow, but all of it infiltrating over much of it. Thatcher Creek fully infiltrated, Reeves Creek fully infiltrating by the time it got to the southern portion of the basin, all outside of the extent of the Perched Aquifer system. Same for Gridley over there in the central portion. Over to the 21st of January, by that time, we noticed that, San Antonio Creek had stopped flowing continuously across the basin. That phenomenon actually happened about the 15th to 17th of January. So by the time we got to the depth of street monitoring well, San Antonio Creek, all of its flow had fully infiltrated. And then it picked back up again where the Perched Aquifer system is, south of Ojai Avenue. Of course, we only measured about 1/10 of the flow that we had on the 5th, about 1/2 CFS at that old diversion works. You can see how that photograph is so much drier by comparison to what we had just a couple days before. As we get further, that's where the full infiltration point is, in the vicinity of the spreading grounds. and then it picks back up again. That's what it looks like. And go figure, right at the point of exit, we have almost the exact same amount of flow exiting the basin. Well, why? Because it's coming from a different system. It's not the inflow, and it's not the deep system, it's the Perched Aquifer system that's continuously delivering that almost exact amount of flow. 1.62 CFS is measured on the 21st versus 1.63 on the 5th. Interesting. Montgomery Creek also had a good amount of flow, but only about a third of a CFS. Of course, some of the others here along McNell Creek was dry. Thatcher Creek still infiltrating about the same, little bit of flow, about a tenth of a CFS going under McAndrew. And by the time it fully infiltrated, it looks like this on the 21st of January. Reeves Creek, similarly, able to map that extent. But again, all that 0.22 CFS, at least what we measured at that point, fully infiltrating by the time it gets to the main portions of the basin. Gridley Creek, similarly, barely making it through the little narrows there. And that's how it looks coming out of a pipe at 2/100th of a CFS and fully infiltrating just downstream. Montgomery Creek, of course, continual flow, again, owing to the urbanization in the town and the clayey nature of the soils, the perch system, and some of the lined channels as well. How does this look in summary? This is the chart from the 5th of January, 1.63 CFS at San Antonio Creek and 0.77 out of Montgomery. But on the 5th of January, we had over 8 CFS flowing into the basin as surface water and 2.4 CFS outflow. That means that some 5.6 CFS, which is like 2,500 gallons per minute, flowing into the basin from the creeks, at least, recharging the system. On January 21st, we had about 1 CFS, so maybe 500 gallons a minute coming into the basin as surface flow, but 1.93 CFS outflow. That's the sum of Montgomery Creek and San Antonio Creek at those measurement points. What does that mean for the basin recharge? Okay, so we know our nadir was on the 7th of December, 2021 at 188.64 feet in the Key Well, Elrod Well, in the main production aquifers of the basin. It's come up close to 15 feet there, up to about 49,600. It's still rising, but that quantity is only about 3,000 acre feet. I say only, it's a full years of supply in some years, and it's still going up, and we're still early in winter, literally a month in. On the larger scale, this graphic is getting more complicated, and so over the next few slides, you'll see how we split this out. You've got precipitation on the upper portion and daily rainfall, similar to the chart that I showed in the beginning, and we'll distill out again. We've also put on this one where the flow has been continuous across the basin during the flashy storms and shortly thereafter up to mid-January. We had continuous flow across the basin in San Antonio Creek. That's where the light bar vertical line is right around the turn of the year. We have the Elrod Well in the darker blue and its measurements. You can see how it started to recover, as well as the San Antonio Creek Spreading Grounds Rehabilitation Project Depth Discrete Monitoring Well is the uppermost graph, that red line that looks like a shepherd's crook, where it just peaks right after the initial flow and then recedes. The Bedrock Well there doing something similar, but still rising. Down in the yellow is the actual Perched Aquifer water levels. And then below that are the main aquifer water levels in the southern depth discrete monitoring well, and of course, surface flow. There's a lot going on here, and I figured what we better do is actually separate this out into really just the time scale of this water year to answer some of these questions. So up at the San Antonio Creek Spreading Grounds Rehabilitation Project, I've distilled this chart that I showed in the beginning with bars of vertical rainfall in inches in the purple. And the lighter purple is that cumulative amount of precipitation that we've received. And what you'll notice in this is in the recharge area. So this is right where the San Antonio Creek enters the Ojai Basin at the Spreading Grounds area. And what you'll notice is that there's not a lot of action until we get about 12 inches of rain, at which point, boom, the response is almost immediate in that area, and this flushing of water starts coming down to the main aquifer, which at that point is only from 190 to 210 feet below ground surface. That recharge is almost instantaneous, literally overnight, where it starts to reach its peak a couple days later and then start to recede in that shepherd's crook fashion. Let's compare that to what's going on at the other depth discrete monitoring well. This graphic's a little bit more complex, but the rainfall precipitation, both daily and cumulative, is the same. What we have now are 4 different casings shown on a single graph. Now, some of these look pretty similar and some of them look pretty different. The similar ones are the 2 deepest screen intervals, which are 225 to 275 and then 290 to 330 feet. That's these darkest blue lines, sort of sawtooth there with other pumping that's going on, largely for domestic wells that are nearby, I think, where you've got a pretty near our basin annual nadirs in December. And then once we start to get some rain, some recharge, and it slowly is tracking upward. That's the main production aquifer. It's slow to receive the recharge, receiving it later in time than the main precipitation events, and lesser in magnitude than some of the others that we see. Now, this darker, slightly darker blue line here at the bottom is one of these intermediate zones that probably is just isolated from much of the rest of the system, not receiving much any recharge at all yet. And this light blue line is the Perched Aquifer well. This is just the 25-foot deep well that is in the Perched Aquifer only, and is, I think, one of the most interesting and telling notes of hydrographic information here. What you'll see is this light blue line is it's marching along relatively consistently, hits its nadir in December, and then we get that big precipitation event in mid-December. All of a sudden, that line shoots up. It goes up a good 2 feet or 3 feet, and then starts to recede almost immediately. But at the same time, we have a very slow aggression or recharge reaching the main aquifer systems 200 feet below that. Then the second event comes, instantaneous recharge to that perched system. The response in the main aquifer, totally different, consistent, slow, eventually getting there, but the perched aquifer is responding fast. The third system, just around New Year's, reaches its relatively local peak and then begins to recede almost immediately, as if that perched aquifer system is just a pass through of water, recharge from rain, not coming out of the main portion of the basin, a completely different shape hydrograph. One's going up, one's going down, totally different systems, isolated and disconnected. What's happening in San Antonio Creek? Any guesses? Same precipitation curves, same bar charts, and same cumulative amount of precipitation. But we have this logger that we've put in San Antonio Creek near the basin outflow point to catch how flashy San Antonio Creek is. When it rains, the creek flows. When it stops, it really stops. It goes down significantly. Rains again, comes back down again and recedes. Comes back up and recedes again. If I click back, which of these systems does it more resemble? Obviously, it's the Perched Aquifer system with those peaks and recessions as opposed to the main aquifer system continual recharge. So to conclude, we have some concluding statements about this in the perfect storms from this year and what I call the perfect recession. In 12.99 inches of rain on the valley floor, if we think about the 36 square mile area, over 25,000 acre feet of water to the Ojai tributary area has been delivered this water year. That has resulted in 15 feet of water level rise in the Key Well area to this week, which represents over 3,000 acre feet of water recharged to the main production aquifers as reflected in the Key Well so far, and still rising. As we sit here today, by the time I finish this sentence, that water level will be shallower. Still not pumping as much water from that portion of the basin as we will in the summertime. This also means that we've got over 10 feet of water level rise in the Perched Aquifer, which correlates well with precipitation and begins receding immediately after the rain stops. And then, of course, we have the San Antonio Creek discharge, which has a hydrograph which correlates very well with rainfall. And the Perched Aquifer system's completely different than the a grading or recharging hydrographs of the main aquifer system. And more importantly, that creek flow recedes while the main aquifer water levels continue to rise. So there's a simplified synopsis of our perfect storms and perfect recession thus far. Still praying for rain, of course, and we'll see what we get. But so far, so good. And we've been able to monitor this like never before at both temporal and spatial levels of detail. So happy to answer any questions, but that would conclude our basin input and output presentation for this month.
Thank you, Jordan. Anyone have any questions?
Yes, Richard, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Jordan, if you have a chance, you might want to walk behind City Hall. Stewart Creek is flowing a fraction of a cubic feet per second, but steady, obviously going into San Antonio Creek. I don't know if that's an important thing to consider measuring at some point, but it is as of yesterday afternoon, flowing pretty steady at a fraction of the cubic feet per second.
Yeah, I appreciate that kind of information. It's pretty helpful because we're obviously not having eyes on that at all time. But we do measure that water when it reaches that Montgomery Creek discharge, that channel underneath Creek Road. And of course, by that point, it's coalesced with other tributary channels. But I appreciate that.
Just so I mention it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jordan, I think it would be helpful if we, for next month, if we could see the flows at the confluence during the same time period. I'd be interested to know how much that creek gains.
Yes, in fact, the county flood gauge that's there, we occasionally can pull down data from it and actually quantify that. But I do have some video and photographic information from December that I took, and we can continue to collect that in our next reconnaissance. So good suggestion, and we'll implement it.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, thanks, Jordan.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is public comments on items not on tonight's agenda. Do we have any public that wish to speak? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. We don't have any questions. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve, Wyrick.
I second, Bob.
Okay, call the roll.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Wyrick,
Yes.
Director Thielke,
Yes.
and Chair Hages.
Yes.
It's
Okay, next
unanimous.
item.
Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer's report. John?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick update. The net change in cash position for December was an increase of $3,500, giving us a bank balance of a little over $18,000. So we still have not seen reimbursement on the grant as yet. That's about $86,000. I'm hoping to see that soon. We had expenses of $6,959. About half of that was for Cure Groundwater's work during that month, and not only the groundwater monitoring, but some of the monitoring well work. Extractions for the year, water year for 2020-21 was 4,341 acre feet. And those numbers are based upon what people report to us. So, you know, there could be maybe even a little more, but at least the reported extractions are that amount. For the year, the agency received $290,291 in revenue. And as I mentioned, we're still waiting on that grant money. So that's all I've got on the treasurer's report.
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. John, I've looked at the last few years, and I've looked at where the balances are and where we're going. It looks like we're kind of, depending on the rain and the use and our expenses, we're going to be getting pretty skinny about the middle part of March. possibly, if we don't get that grant money.
Well,
Am I
yeah, and
overreacting or?
no, I have that same concern. If we can get the grant money, we'll be in good shape. Plus, we should have a extraction statements going out. Should have gone out this month. Is that right, Roberta? I see you
They're
shaking
coming
your head.
in.
Yeah,
They're coming in.
Yeah, so we seeing that revenue as well. And the big expense that we've been facing over the last few months has been the groundwater sustainability plan. And most of that's going to be receding. We'll still have some expenses related to finishing up the submittal, plus the item on the agenda tonight for the annual report. So we're keeping an eye on it. I'm kind of crossing my fingers. Things will look pretty good in about another month. And hopefully we'll get that money on the grant. And if we can get that grant money, we're in good shape. And then I know I was going to bring the budget to the board this meeting, and I'll talk about it later. But there's a whole lot of intricacies and items on that we need to start looking at. So I want to give you a much better detailed approach on that next month. So did I answer your question, Bob?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, can we have a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
So moved, Warwick.
Second, Elke.
Call the roll.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Wyrick,
Yes.
Director Thielke,
Yes.
and Chair Hages.
Yes. Okay.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the annual report, scope of services for DDEC.
Point of order, Chair. I think we're right at 3:30, I believe.
Yeah, we need to move. So leave this session and click on that link and
Sure, just report that no action was taken by the board in closed session.
Okay, we're going to move now to action item 8B, which is a proposed scope of services from DUDEC. John?
yeah, I'll just briefly introduce it. As part of the groundwater sustainability plan, the SIGMA requirements, groundwater sustainability agencies are required to do an annual report. And then every 5 years, we're required also to update the groundwater sustainability plan. And so DUDEC has provided a scope of services to the agency. There is a little bit of time crunch related to getting this work done. I think it has to be by the end of April, but I'll let Trey speak to this and give you a little bit overview and background on it. Trey?
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, Chair Hages and board members. Yeah, this is a SIGMA requirement. It's actually required each year to be provided to the Department of Water Resources by April 1st, the submittal. And in that, they have some specific requirements. Those include providing total water supply to the basin, providing groundwater level information or updated hydrographs, and also providing estimates of annual change in groundwater storage. For the total storage, obviously, we're going to rely on the reporting to OHI for groundwater. We have, as part of the GSP, been working with Casitas Municipal Water District, and they now have a new system in GIS whereby they can provide more actual deliveries to the OHI basin. So we'll have some coordination with them. And the one thing I think that's a little bit more challenging as part of this annual reporting is just these change in storage estimates. Typically, Jordan's been presenting a linear approach based on one well. In the GSP, we're recommending a GIS approach using multiple wells. We can present those methods to the board, and we can have Jordan review them before we implement them. But that's kind of the major lift in this piece of work. The schedule is going to be a little bit delayed just because we were looking to get this approved last month, but the cost we're estimating is $30,000. We'll have to compile all the data for groundwater levels, production, and water supplied, and do this storage estimate. Obviously, as we get into it, we can update you on the scope for the groundwater storage estimate and the total fee. Any questions?
Chair Pages?
Bill.
So it doesn't matter what the status of the review of the GSP is. It's due April 1, regardless of the status of the DWR review.
Oh,
That's correct.
All right, and then 30,000 is the annual estimate at this point?
That's the annual estimate based on what we've been doing these now for Borrego Basin, Santa Monica Basin, Bucks Canyon. This estimate is based on what is taken for the other reports.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
move.
Second, Delkey.
Okay, call the roll.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Thielke,
Yes.
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Wyrick,
Yes.
and Chair Hages.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have item 9 is information items. The sustainability plan update is on there. John, have we filed it yet?
No, we haven't filed it yet. Dudek is still working on the final edits. I have started data entry into the GSP portal with the Department of Water Resources. They sure want a lot of data. You just can't download the document and that's it. So they have, they're really punishing us essentially they want you to put down kind of a whole table of contents in separate fields. So they don't have to go looking in the document for what they want. So I've done portion of that. I've sent Dudek the information related to logins. I know Dudek's finishing the edits and they're providing, there's a whole nother Excel spreadsheet that has to be put together. And so we're getting through it. We're working on it. But on top of all this, Department of Water Resources, their website has been crashing. So we think that probably that's because there's a whole lot of people trying to get in at the same time. So and in fact, there's a notice on their website today that says they're going to be doing maintenance tonight on the portal. Great. So I'm guessing that there's a chance that they may delay the final date on these because of all the numbers of plans that have to be input and the problems they've been having with their site, but we don't know that yet. I haven't heard a word. But with that, I just wanted to mention what I've been involved with. And Trey, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I can just say that we worked with GMA staff. We have all of the edits done. As of today, the draft final GSP is published. We're just wrapping up the appendices right now as I speak. As long as the portal is open, we've been submitting other GSPs and it's been crashing all week long. As long as the portal is open, we'll get it in by the deadline.
These brilliant bureaucrats did not anticipate the demands on their own portal.
What is the deadline? I thought we were going to do this really early months ago.
Yeah, it's Monday.
Deadline.
Monday, yeah.
The 31st.
Monday.
Let's get it in.
Yes. You think it's worth sticking it in, putting a stamp on it, mailing it, and get it postmarked?
Yeah, we can also send it to the DWR manager for Southern California. We'll send them a link, and that way we actually did that Borrego because there wasn't a way to submit basins that were being adjudicated. So we'll send it directly to them if there's any issues with the portal, and give them the ability to download it, and that's way we'll comply with the regulations.
All right. I think we would all like a note from you all when you sent it. So,
We'll take care of that.
and send it delivery receipt, right?
yeah. Okay. Are there any other issues?
That's all I have.
All right. Well, hearing none, we are adjourned at.
Well, before you adjourn, did you want to? I just want to give you a quick briefing on the budget.
Okay. Yeah.
So you know what's coming forward. Let me see if I can do a share screen here real quick. I didn't get to do what I wanted to, but this is. I'll just go through a few slides quickly, about 4 slides. This is a document that was actually put together by our bookkeeper. Essentially just puts kind of linear expenses out there throughout the year. And so there's really no science into what dollars get in what months. And so that's part of the issue. But if you look at this one, at least it'll look at what the expected 2021, 22 totals are for operating expenses and revenue. This was a cost of service analysis I did in 2020. I did share that with Dudek, and it's some of that's reflected on one of the next slides. Right now, we get a extraction fee of about $65 an acre foot, and then there's. Let me look at that. I'm getting back to my notes. Pardon me. Where is it? About 60, excuse me, it's
25, isn't it?
Well, it's $62 because there's a $25 extraction fee and then a $37 groundwater sustainability plan fee. On top of that, we charge $65 a quarter for a wellhead fee. So that's a fixed charge in itself. And just to put that in comparison with what Dudek put together, this next table in the plan, it shows out for the next 20 years, the general overview of expenses for operations, GSP implementation cost, annual reports, 5-year updates, and then what the associated fee would have to be in each of those years. So you can see where that fee would range $67 to $159 a year, assuming we did everything that was laid out here. So that's something we're gonna have to talk about next month when I bring this back, because one of the thoughts was at some point when the GSP was completed, the thought was maybe we could lower that GSP fee and certainly help the pumpers out. Based on this chart, it looks like probably not going to get lowered. It's going to go up, if anything. And so I just wanted to give you an overview of that before we get into the details. But I think this is quite a good table. I'm glad, Trey, you guys put this together. And I'll be using a lot of this information to redo the cost of service analysis and see where we need to be over the next few years. That's all I have at this point.
I think it'd be helpful when you do put it together to separate out the traditional GMA costs, expenses.
Yeah.
And so that we can be able to see, how much this is going to actually cost over what we traditionally were used to.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, just I have a quick question.
Yeah.
John, I noticed that all of your inflation factors were greater than the assumed general inflation factor. And they varied somewhat considerably between categories. Is that just experience guesstimates?
Yeah, some of it was, I had dealt with the $60 million annual budget for the agency I used to work for. And we always had variable inflation amounts for all different categories.
Right.
But we also used to make the inflation factors, maybe a little bit on the conservative side. They were a little bit high. And it was just a projection, but at the end of the day, you know, some things end up being higher than others and some lower, and it all kind of balances out. But all that needs to be updated. And that's why I want to spend some time looking at that again and get you some more updated numbers, and then taking into account these costs that DUDEC has put together for us.
And that's important. I appreciate that, because when you're talking about cumulative changes, a single percentage point becomes significant.
Agreed. Okay. That's all I have.
Any other questions? All right. Any other questions? Okay, if not, then we can adjourn at 4:18. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.